Hey guys, I'm James. I'm one of the interpreters at the Old Barracks Museum, and today I'm going to be answering a question mainly about how the American Army was able to escape on the night of the 2nd of January 1777 into the morning of the 3rd of January from the British positions here at Trenton. Basically, to answer that question really shortly, it took the Army about 7 hours or so to get from here in Trenton to swing around the flank of the British Army to fight up at Princeton. So by basically daybreak on the 3rd of January, they were going into combat against the British rearguard up at Princeton. But the day before, the 2nd of January, was probably one of the most strategically advantageous days for the American Army. They'd spent basically the last few days setting up their positions just south of the Assunpink Creek after their major victory a few days earlier at Trenton itself on the 26th of December. So they came back a few days later, reinvigorated with the sense of victory, and they set up their positions just south of Trenton around where Mill Hill is today. Now, from there, they had to basically set about defenses because they knew that the British Army was more or less about to come down and attack them in the next few days, and their best position of advantage was to sit at the Assunpink Creek and let them come and attack them. So that's what essentially happened. The British took about 7,000 of their best troops. They marched basically from Princeton during the day of the 2nd of January, and they finally got to Trenton around 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 2nd of January. And from there, they attacked the Americans pretty heavily. They took 3 separate major assaults to try to push the Americans off the southern bank of the Assunpink Creek. Now, luckily, the Americans were able to have a really well-strung position, and they were able to push the British back 3 separate times. And once the third wave was finally fought off, they then had to sort of figure out what to do next, because they weren't really in the best situation to stay where they were. Because they knew to their rear was a British force, probably in southern New Jersey. To their front, obviously, was the British Army they had fought all day. And then to their left was the Delaware River. So all the British had to do in the morning was wake up, go around the flank of the American Army, pin them against the Delaware, and then force the Americans to surrender. And that would have been the end of the war, essentially, at least with Washington's army. So the Americans knew this was the case, and so Washington and his staff got together, and they decided to take a tactical withdrawal that evening and go around the flank of the British, move up to Princeton, and hopefully escape without being spotted by the British Army. Now, throughout the night, luckily, because the weather had gotten a lot colder than it was during the day, the roads froze around this area, and that made the Army able to get through this area pretty quickly. So it took about 7 hours, like I was saying earlier, to go from one point to another. And by the time day broke on the 3rd of January, they ran to the rear guard of the British Army at Princeton and had their second major victory within the span of 10 days or so, keeping the Army alive long enough to go back and serve through the rest of the Revolution, and basically giving America its second chance at achieving independence. So, thank you so much for asking us this question and helping us keep history alive.